think any of them care if they hurt anyone. And then you could get into the real political stuff. Is it a Republican? Is it a white nationalist? Is it a Democratic type sympathizer? Who knows?
Right. We don't know. But it is interesting.
Exactly.
I think. Terry, thank you very much. Great to see you tonight.
You're welcome, Tucker. Thank you.
Well, the federal government will be deploying nearly 1,000 troops to the southern border as many thousands of Central Americans make their way toward the United States. Sheriff Mark Daniels oversees 80 miles of border in southeast Arizona, and he joins us tonight. Sheriff, thanks very much for coming on. So,
thanks, Tucker.
Will these troops make a material difference, do you think, in the crisis that we've been covering for the past week with this migrant caravan?
I do. It sends a message. It sends a very important message that we're not going to let people just come to a border that they see as vulnerable, they see as weak, and that's why they're coming. I mean, they could claim refugees out of Mexico and stop there, but no, they're coming all the way, another 1,000 miles all the way up into our southern border because it's a vulnerable border. What I see, Tucker, is our congressional folks, Republican, Democrats, Independents, pointing fingers, our congressional leaders. Nobody's solving this issue. Why the men and women on the front line of this, the federal partners, our state law enforcement, our local law enforcement are standing by doing everything we can do. And it's tough. It's a challenge.
Okay, so if you were in charge, obviously you spent a lot of your life thinking about this problem, and it's right in your neighborhood. What would you do?
Well, the first thing we got to do is this. I've worked this southern border for 34 years. I've seen the evolution. I've seen the successes on the border. I've also seen the failures of it. What we got going for us right now, what I think is very, very positive, is the collaborative efforts from state, local, and federal law enforcement, the executive branch, that are working so closely. It's the best it's been in my 3 decades when it comes to best practices on the border, as we come up with community plans, federal plans that complement each other, and that's so important. What we need, we got a president that's actually out there in front saying we need to have a secure border, which I 100% agree with. What we need is our congressional folks, our elected, our national leaders to say, let's complement that too. Let's be part of this, because this is a policy, this is a legal issue that needs addressed.
Right. So I need to ask you this question, since you live there and have, as you said, been involved in it for almost 35 years. In Washington and New York, this is framed purely as an ethnic issue, as a racial issue. Is that how people in your county see it, or is it more complicated maybe from their perspective?
We don't see it like that. You don't hear that kind of talk on the border. You just don't hear it.
Yeah.
You hear it everywhere else. But on the front line where we're dealing with it every day, 34 years, I've never even seen a complaint on a deputy or a law enforcement officer on the board that's based around race. We just don't see that. What we see is a community working with law enforcement at all levels, trying to come up with solutions to stop the flow into our country, to enhance that quality of life on our border and throughout this nation. That's what we see down here. And what the rest of the country doesn't see is the violent aspect of this too. Give you an example. Last night, my deputies that work within a border team were out and chasing smugglers. They found one of the smugglers. They had a physical altercation. That's the stuff you don't see. It's a vulnerable time here at the border, and these criminal transnational organizations that are pushing these drugs and this human smuggling, which I call modern day slavery, into our country, they don't see that. We see that. It's a very vulnerable and dangerous game.
Yeah, no one mentions that here. Funny. Sheriff, thanks very much for your perspective. Great to talk to you. No, they don't. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Up next.